Welcome to the Karuna Life, a podcast dedicated to exploring the connection between spirituality and everyday life. I'm Gina Kitzmiller. I'm an intuitive, a Reiki master teacher, Akashic Records facilitator, and founder of Trimatri Reiki. As a longtime spiritual seeker, my goal is to help you navigate the complexities of the spiritual world, learn how to enhance your intuition, and lead a heart-centered life. Join me as we unravel the mysteries of energy work and metaphysical practices. We'll dive into high vibrational conversations with experts and personal storytellers, and learn how to recognize and communicate with those in spirit. So get ready to embrace your inner mystic and explore the realms of the unseen. Hi, everyone. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Catherine Hinkle. Catherine is a U.S. Air Force veteran, family nurse practitioner, and holistic wellness guide who blends science-based medicine with intuitive and energy practices. After her own healing journey, including relief from chronic pain and depression and a 100-pound weight loss, Catherine now supports clients through intuitive counseling, practical Reiki, holistic nutrition, and trauma-aware yoga. Catherine is a certified holistic wellness coach and holistic nutritionist, a certified intuitive counselor, a practical Reiki master certified instructor, and a certified 200-hour mindful resilience yoga teacher through the Veterans Yoga Project. She is based here in Ohio. She is a mom of 3, and she is currently writing a memoir on faith, loss, and awakening. Catherine, thank you so much for being here.
I am so grateful for being here, and I'm really looking forward to this today. And I recommend everyone out there that's tuning in to grab the tissues. You might need them, given the nature of what we're going to talk about today. So,
Yes, even before we started recording and I was talking about my beloved dog Bailey that passed away, I could feel like the emotions starting to come up, and he's been gone for, years now. Unfortunately, as I always say, grief doesn't have a finish line. So as we talk about these topics, certain emotions are going to come up for both of us, and it might come up for listeners as well. But I think we're both hoping that by sharing our stories, that we can lend some healing, that we can lend some insight and divine wisdom to come through today for those of you who are listening. The first wanted to start, Catherine, because I know you have a really broad history and you do a lot of different things, but today we're going to focus on animal communication. And it's an area that I think is going to begin to really take off and grow in terms of energy work and intuitive work. And people often ask me, like, do you know anyone who's an animal communicator? Or I'm trying to reach out, to a pet that's either passed or even one that's still here that they're trying to communicate with. So can you tell me what nudged you towards animal communication, and when did it click that the animals were actually responding?
well, thank you for asking. And I will say, even as a young child, noticing that I had a deep connection with animals, not just birds, which ties into my grandfather who passed over, but also just being raised in a family where we did a lot of cat rescues, and just my love of animals just developed as I grew up and spending a lot of time out in nature. And so fast forward to today, as I start to, raise my own children and have family, I also notice that experience kind of as they find us, so it's almost like I say God, spirit, puts you in a place where you're just that person that that animal needs. And it's sometimes when that happens to me, which is quite often, I sometimes go, "Oh, not today. I can't handle a mom cat with 5 kittens, not today." We do it. Like I'm that person that I'll just be at that place at the right time. So I've noticed a lot of those experiences. Again, all types of animals, you name it. I've probably rescued it or had my hand in getting it help in some way, shape, or form. And a experience I wanted to share as well more recently is at the animal shelter where I was volunteering. I began to notice something, and animals are also, they have feelings, they're sentient beings, they have feelings, emotions, they can tune into energy. And so as I would kind of go And they'd always say, don't go near that one. More specifically, cats. Some of the more aggressive or labeled aggressive cats, I was recommended to stay away from. And those are the ones that I was more drawn to because already they're getting a bad label. And it's because, in my opinion, that certain people just don't have the patience or they don't want or have the capacity to connect with an animal on that level. So, what I was noticing as I was in there is those are the ones I'd gravitate to. And then I even thought about doing a study of this phenomenon. How when your energy is connecting with these animals, so mind you, they're each in these cages and it's loud, it's noisy, the smells, they're scared. And two things started to happen. And I would go to each individual cat and spend a little bit of time with them. I started to notice two things. And what was happening is they all started one by one, almost like ping, 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 eating and pooping. Now, that might sound kind of odd to some of you listening out there, but just think about that. Think about, us. Sometimes we just have to do certain things in the privacy and comfort of our own home or when you're really anxious and our gut is our second brain, right? So, the fact that in an environment like that, with all of that stimulation, with all of the noise and everything that they've been going through, how they even got there, to see them being that comfortable in my energy to start eating, calm down a little, able to use the litter pan, that spoke to me. So I just wanted to share that. So that in and of itself, I knew something was happening. And it's similar with the dogs. I just use the cat room as an example because it's more accessible to really visit one-on-one with each of them. But I do also have an experience about the dog. So I hope that may answer your question, or if maybe you want me to elaborate on that, I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, that's such an interesting demonstration of the power of energy. And I've always heard and believed that animals, both cats and dogs, really any animal, they're extremely sensitive to energy. But I've always heard, particularly cats, are very, very intelligent, very, very finely tuned, finely wired to read energy. And I never thought about the environment. But when you describe that, I thought, my gosh, I could feel kind of my anxiety of like the noise, like you said, and the smell, like, and what that would do to anyone in that
Mhm.
circumstance. So when we talk about pet communication, and like I said, there's a lot of pet intuitives coming up now. How do you define a pet intuitive?
My definition would be just the ability and the capacity to connect or pick up energies or our pets' moods, feelings. Also, to have the capacity or the ability to receive intuitive messages from their higher self or their guides or whomever wants to speak through them. I have all of my clairs are pretty lit up. That took a lot of time and practice, but I do receive like intuitive messages through images, hearing, clairsentience, just like when you started talking when we first started, I got the tingles up and down my arms to the crown of my head. So, all those different ways that a person that's communicating with an animal just can pick up on those sometimes very subtle changes, but also receive again, those messages that may not mean here nor there to us, but when you're picking that up, it's exactly what the person that is receiving that message needed. So that's kind of just using all of those senses that we have and more to bring those messages forth for people.
Wonderful. Yes. And for those who aren't familiar, when we talk about the clairs, which is the way that we receive intuitive information, it's kind of like any other skill. Some of us have different skill sets in terms of being intuitive. I don't consider myself a pet intuitive by any means. I have had a client and worked with a dog who was getting ready to cross over, and it was a very interesting experience. So when you're talking with the animals and their higher self, I know one of the areas that we wanted to kind of dive into a little bit is the topic of pet loss and grief around losing our beloved pets, because it is very much a loss like any other loss would be in our lives and can really be difficult to navigate. So I know that we had talked beforehand that I wanted to share that I had my what I call my soulmate pet. His name was Bailey, and he was a yellow, kind of a honey colored lab. And he was with me from goodness, from my, like, late 20s, up until 2017, and so you have that bond with that pet, but him and I just had that very special connection where I swear that dog would know what I was thinking, or I could say something and he just got it, like, we were just that connected.
Mm.
And he passed, I was just devastated, and I had never lost a pet like that before, and it was just like any other loss. Like, I was crying nonstop. I had, set out his ashes, and I set out a candle in his picture, and I really liked to have those touchstones, of him around, that I found that it was a really difficult chapter, just like it is with any loss. And I think oftentimes people underestimate that, or in our society, we want to just kind of move it along, like you've lost this pet, and that you should be, back to normal in like a week. And like the heart doesn't heal in that time frame, right? It takes a while. So, or do you have any experience with pet loss that you would like to share with listeners?
Yes, and I have had many, and I love all of them dearly, but just like you, Gina, I would say, and I'm getting those tingles, Grace was my soulmate cat. Um, and I think to just speak on how people in general deal with grief, I do feel like sometimes depending on how you were raised or maybe your faith, that for some reason animal grief is less important. It's like how can you measure that grief and love of a pet compared to a person? So, and I would just say they're not animal people, just you try to just ignore that and grieve in the way that you can, because I definitely feel there is a very equal relationship between both of them. I mean, so for Grace, she came into our life and found us in 2008 in October. She followed us on trick or treat night. I'll never forget it. And I needed her more maybe than she needed me, but we needed each other. And it was right after my daughter had passed away. So right off, the soonest that Grace came into our lives, it was just deep and a soulmate bond. And like I said, I was grieving the loss of my daughter, and then she just kind of filled that void. Um, and so fast forward, we just put her down. It might be already 2 years ago, but I can cry right now just like it was yesterday. I already did that this morning, and sometimes I do every day. But to have an animal, and she was with us for 18 years, and somebody come up to me and question, how could I not grieve the loss of it? Maybe to some people it would just be a cat. This is a a being, a beautiful soulmate cat that was sent to our life, who was with me through the worst of times and celebrated in the best of times. I mean, I've been through a lot of losses since then. She was right there, moved, she was right there. My kids are graduated, she was right there. The milestones and the things I got to experience with her in some ways is deeper than what I've experienced with a person. And some people will understand that and some won't, and that's okay. Again, she's very much a part of my everyday. I listen to certain types of music and just what that means to a lot of people, God's grace or grace, and it just gets me in my feelings. And her and I have had wonderful meetings since she's passed, and if we get into that conversation, I can, talk about how my children and how people in general can choose to personally honor their pet. But Grace is definitely intertwining her way through some of the things I'm working on right now, with my book, and just her presence is always here and around me, and that provides me a lot of comfort as well. So,
I love when you said intertwine. It's just I could see that love really, right? Just kind of threading through, your life and staying with you. So often I think that pets do come in at particular times. And I know that when Bailey came in, I was younger, I was in my 20s, but I was unhappily married at the time and ended up getting divorced. And we kind of joked about it is that I said he could keep the house and I just wanted the dog. And he was actually in the divorce papers, but that was my priority. So like you, Bailey was with me through a lot of real life changes, right? It was like me kind of becoming independent and single. And then later when Joe and I got married and ended up having children, this dog was with me through all of those life transitions. And I do think there's something about them. And I love that you use the word being because they're their own little spiritual being. This isn't just a thing, right? This is a being. They have their own personality, they have their own energy signature, they have their own soul and spirit. And they're in your day-to-day life. It's the constant with a pet, right? You're constantly caring for them. They're the first thing you see when you wake up. They might be the last thing you see when you go to bed. And just that companionship that we form with them is incredibly intimate. It's incredibly deep. And I think that that is often not recognized in our society around really how valuable pets are, but also that spirit and soul connection with them. And I always say, as a lot of people do with grief, it's really equivalent to how much love is there. So if we really love these pets and if they're our soulmate pet or we have a special connection, of course, our grief is going to be just as magnified. Why? Because we loved them so, so much and we felt very connected with them.
oh, absolutely. And it's as you're speaking, it's also there is a reason in movies, there's a reason in certain things that will kind of draw those types of people that say, I love animals more than people, that's a real thing. Like, yeah, I could probably say that sometime because it's that unconditional love that's all they wanna do, and I know cats have their own, they have their own quirks with their personality, but just even I'm seeing your dog Bailey, I mean, think about that, like, that the unconditional love that a dog, to me, is a very different than the way a cat they're just different, not right or wrong or better, it's just dogs, just that unconditional, you leave for 5 minutes, it's like, I haven't seen you for a year, and I think that's why people are so drawn to animals and feel they can connect deeper with animals versus people sometimes because they don't judge us, and like you, yeah, Grace was with me through my divorce, Grace was with me through the births of my 2 sons, my son that named her was 5, why a beautiful boy at 5 came up with the name Grace. I think there's a deeper message there, and now he's 22. It's just amazing the amount of love and life that she provided, not 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, and how each of them have their own experience. So just wonderful, and yeah, just all the things and the moves and the tears and everything that I was going through, she was always there, and that is something that I'll forever miss, even though, again, I've have other pets since then. There's just those certain ones, just like in other things that we connect to, it's just a deeper bond. It's you can't really put it into words.
No, I think that's very true. I have 3 dogs right now, and I love them all in their own little, unique way, but Bailey was just something different. There was a much deeper bond as much as I love them, so and they're not in the room right now, which I'm glad that they didn't hear me say that, but, I wanted to ask when you were talking about because Grace sounded like she was such a part of your family, how your children dealt with her passing.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Um, I was hoping my son that named her would be able to be here, and he wasn't. He's in the Air Force, and it's funny because I knew she was starting to slow down, and I would call, and I would tell the vet, and I wasn't ready to do anything, and maybe this will help somebody else to come to terms when they feel it's around that time. I really appreciated her saying to me, "Start marking on the calendar. Circle her good days and put X's on the bad ones. And when you start to see more X's than circles or hearts and stars, whatever that is, then you're going to know when it's time." And no pressure to bring her in, no pressure to tell me to do all these tests. It was really just start noticing. And when you're noticing, their quality of life is diminishing and the good days are few and far between, then you'll know. And so, with that being said, I had scheduled to have her put down and I canceled. I told my son, I wanted you to be here, and he couldn't. And so I waited, and my other two children were here for the summer because they live with their dad in Pennsylvania. And my middle son didn't want to go. He said, "Drop me off." He's 14 at the time. "I just want to go to the lake and fish." And my youngest son went. And so he was there with me at the vet. And mind you, my two younger children never met their sister. So when she passed away, it's like a tsunami of grief and tears, and an ocean just was unleashed in that moment. But I don't think he has in his life ever seen me unleash that much emotion. And a lot of it wasn't just about what was happening with Grace, but it was also reliving watching that with my daughter. Um, and all of those memories just coming to the surface, and it just all come out. And I actually played a song for her as she was passing over. And I just want to mention that it might be a little off topic, but I'd never done that for my pet before. And it was a song by Mercy Me. I just wanted her to know that I know that's where she was going and that we were here and that I didn't want her to feel alone. And so I would say with your children that that not only bonded me in an experience with my youngest Jacob, and then Christopher, he kind of helped in his own way, just kind of being open to that as well. Like, and some children, again, your child, what they're able and willing to accept or manage or talk about, or just like our pets, just like our children, they're all their own personalities. And so Jacob and I never had done this with one of my pets either. um we brought her home, and I had already planned this. I had bought canvases and paint, and I knew that I wanted to do paintings with her paws. And I asked the kids, "What colors do you want? What colors do you want?" And we made um, 4 paintings. And for Jacob to be so willing and up close and personal to this beautiful animal who, for 13 years of his life, was part of his life, and now delicately and sensitively helping me maneuver her body, wash one paw off so we could paint in another color. It was absolutely beautiful. And now that is just another, and this might come up more if we talk about it, a way to honor her. And so each of them have their own little canvas. And then my 22-year-old took it a step further, and I had to ship his to him. And he took that exact paw print that on his canvas that we had made, and he has it tattooed on his wrist in her memory. I mean, just beautiful. Um, so I just encourage people to honor their pet in a way that speaks to them and is right for them. Grace is in the backyard. The house that I'm in at this moment, I've been in the same place for almost 20 years now, and she came with this neighborhood. I just could not see not bringing her back home. Some people might choose to bring their animal home. I just wanna say in the past with Dory, love that dog, but my children were young at the time, and I don't think at their age they would understand or understood, "Well, why is Dory in that box on the mantle?" Or I was for some reason worried about bringing her home and putting in the backyard because I live near where there's a lot of nature, and I was worried about that. So again, age appropriate, I just chose to have, my other cats and Dory, they said they will be cremated, and they spread their ashes at a pet cemetery. And I just trust that they do that, but it was just a really beautiful experience for all of us, and she's still here. And I will say, just because it's coming to mind right now, because of that, the intense amount of grief, that lingered in this house, her energy, and my children had to go back to Pennsylvania. I did, have a home cleansing or a blessing, and it was amazing. And I will tell you that I mean, I just broke down, but it really was just saying, you know, "I love you, Grace," and just to kind of release some of those emotions that had collected, with everything, after she passed away. So, I just wanted to share that as well.
Yes, I agree. I think that what really struck me when you were talking is really showing vulnerability to even our children, and sometimes as parents, at least for me, I almost wanna shield them sometimes from, like, my really big emotions. But I think it's important, and I know that, my kids were younger. I think they knew that when Bailey passed, what happened. They were pretty emotionally, mature children, so even though they were younger at the time, I knew they could handle that. They understood when I went to get the ashes, and I had it was engraved. The place where um, the hospital where he was put down at was just amazing. They really treated it as well as I think any facility could, with the grace and the respect, and just did those little sentimental touches of, like, they you gave me his fur, they gave me his paw print, they gave me the Rainbow Bridge poem, which of course just made me
Oh,
cry, but they really treated it with the respect that it deserved, and I was incredibly grateful to them. I don't think there could have been a better facility to really handle it. They were actually better than my vet, to be honest. So,
yeah.
I knew I was in the right place, but I love that you were able to share that with him, and it sounds like it's an important memory, it's an important lesson, and often we try to shield our children from feeling those emotions, and yet all of us will have those in life. And it just felt like a really beautiful connection, and something about when you were talking about it, it felt, and I'm trying not to really intuit in, Catherine, but it just felt like somehow, like with your daughter's passing, that there was some connection with that when you were talking about it, that just felt very beautiful and heartbreaking, but beautifully connected and emotional, and kind of even connecting him more closely in with her somehow when you were describing it. It was just really, really heartbreaking, but beautiful to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and again, I it wasn't by accident. I just feel like of all the families that she kind of weaved her way through, said, "No, I'm going back. If that cat is still there after Halloween night," which she was, and I scooped her up, and the rest is history. And I think what also was coming through in both it's those situations was this helplessness that you couldn't prevent what was happening, and so in both cases, again, it was kind of a little bit re-traumatizing in that way, where I had to say goodbye to her, and I was powerless to helping and, shielding or protecting her from what was happening, and the same with her, and just saying goodbye to the people we love in general. So
It sounds like Grace in spirit kind of sends you signs like through songs and that you know, talk with her. And I know that I can't say that I talk to Bailey. I mean, I know Bailey's around and he does pop up every now and then. I take that back. There's times where I'm doing like energy work and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a yellow lab. And that's actually my dog. So
Wow.
he does kind of pop in from time to time. And I know that when he first passed, I did feel like I actually kind of saw him, you know, even like with my physical eyes, actually saw kind of an apparition of him like in the hallway as like an energy form. And I just tend to feel him really close. And there's times where it just seems like he'll come up, you know, just like our loved ones do, where something comes up in conversation. You know, you might see a movie or you see something that just like reminds me of him, which is always really sweet. But I wanted to ask because you're so closely connected with Grace, are there any like signs or synchronicities that you would like to share that you feel are from her?
Oh, yes, and so the song is one, and I'll share that in a moment, and also, I'm grateful and blessed that I do have and I didn't become aware of this gift even though I how do I say? It's not something I market myself as, but if people's, pets or passed over loved ones come through when I am working with clients or with energy, then they come through. And so that gift kind of came through after my daughter died and shortly after with my grandpa. And I just mentioned that because I can communicate and speak with them a lot through meditation is when I will have visits. Um, Before back in when my daughter passed away, it was actual visits, like, I can see it happening with and it still does here, like, I'm pointing over to the corner of the room. She makes her presence known regularly, but more so in the meditation or in those visits from Grace, and it again, very emotional, that she was happy, she was healthy, um and she's with my daughter, and she's with Dory, and to have the capacity to be able to see that brings me such peace, and that's something even though that maybe the people that might connect with me for some of that peace in their own with their own pet or in their own grief, they might not have that, and that's okay, but that I can offer that to them, that they are happy up there and to be able to see them visually, so seeing Grace just loving life and just be the cat and not in the way that she left, and it just brings me so much comfort. So, that was the biggest, and it gave me a lot of closure as far as that I everything was unfolded the way it was supposed to. Um, Out of the blue, I get a lot of messages both for people and pets and whomever intuitively through songs. I think the reason is because song, you know, can really tap us into those deep emotions. So spirit will just randomly out of the blue. And so I was just out of the blue and it just popped in my head. And it's a song from Toy Story. And this is, I think, in 99 or 2000. So I had to look it up. And it's the song called When She Loved Me from Toy Story. Sarah McLaughlin, I believe. Now, I just cry, and so I saved the song, and sometimes my daughter there's a song as well, and it'll kinda come through the Spotify, and sometimes I'll say, "Grace, I love you, but not today. I love you," and I'll skip it, and sometimes I just do that depending on where I'm going because I know like, this morning, I did listen to it before we came on here, but I wanted to invite those feelings in, and I it's a way to just cry and connect with her. So, I do get a lot of messages through song, also her name, whether she chose it to be that way, the kind of music I listen to now. So, just as I've started to grow in my faith and deepen my relationship with Jesus, her name's all around me, and it's just so special, and then I have a little video of when I was gifted by a total stranger, one of those stone sleeping cats, I'd never met this woman in my life, and I said, "You don't understand how deeply meaningful this is for me. That's exactly what I need to mark her where she's buried." And my newer cat that she also gave her paw of approval on, that was a huge sign that she was saying, "It's okay. She's not replaceable, but you're taking my place." So I just tell people your pets are grieving too. So you may notice not just your children or your spouse or whoever else your pet or your animal has lived with. Also pay attention to your other pets. That's also a relationship, and they're going to miss that member of the family as well. So I just wanted to add that add that too.
No, it's an important topic to talk about, and I think you might have heard my corgi Max making himself known in the background. Right on cue, but it's I know that they're all yeah, that did make me laugh. But I know that they're all so closely connected, and we didn't have any other pets at the time when Bailey passed, but I can imagine I see the closeness between the 3 dogs that will be a loss when one of them, goes. So, I think it is something that's important to mention. So, would you have any suggestions for listeners for if they do have, a pet that is still there, how to help that pet deal with the loss?
Yeah, and I would kinda just, again, we can get so bogged down with everything going on around us that it really kind of takes that pause and tune in and notice, um, because it might not be something a huge outward expression, just like ourselves and our children and people in general, the way that maybe we express grief in our own way. Maybe your pet's eating habits change or sleeping habits change. And just also, again, I may sound kind of crazy to some people, talk to them, sit with them. Also just maybe having something of comfort from that pet that's no longer there around where they can still have, sometimes that smell, and maybe that's just in the beginning, but just honoring that they might be a little bit sensitive or depressed and just really pay attention to that. And, maybe you're also mine, again, they pick up on our energy. I have one cat who's so hyper in tune. If I'm running around like crazy, I can see his anxiety kicking up. He's really a good mirror energetically to me. So your pet is probably also picking up on how you're feeling and doing, and maybe they're extra clingy. So I would just kind of, take that extra, maybe it's taking them for an extra walk or just doing something more special, but also including them in the grief. And I think that, again, that might not be something that everyone maybe knows how to do, but just whatever feels in your heart, just have that special time with them and acknowledge that, yes, they're still around us, maybe not in the same way, and maybe just show them a little extra love and attention. So,
That's a great suggestion. So I was thinking of what I'd like to maybe leave listeners with, and we'll see if we can kind of brainstorm or see what spirit kind of nudges us on. But I was trying to think of like a practice that they could do to help them feel closer to a pet that has passed away. And for me, touchstones with Bailey when he passed were super important. I can't even describe how important they were to me. I was like, I would have had everything, right? Like the paw print, I wanted his fur, I kept his leash, his collar. I had his ashes out on my bedroom dresser for years and just needed to see that. Kind of still the same thing. Like at night, last thing I would see to kind of tell him good night, kept his picture out. And I think that's changed over the years as like my grief process has changed, but I still miss him. And I think for me, those touchstones of I have a stepping stone for him, but even wind chimes, things like that, that help me to kind of still feel like I have that connection with them were incredibly helpful. So
mhm.
is there anything that you would suggest that you have found helpful as well?
I definitely think all of the things you mentioned, I have, we have for Grace and Dory, our dog, and just maybe some other things is, again, talk to them. Or, I'll say, hey, Grace, like today, even be with me, through me, whatever, with just doing the podcast today, because they're always around. And I personally, I mean, I'm attuned to Reiki. I know pet Reiki is its own kind of special thing. And also meditation, if that's something that is calling to you, because I tell people, and especially in my work, if you're open, I think that's the biggest thing, being open, and you allow yourself to get into that deeper state of calm, of peace, and allowing, you'd be amazed at what will come through for people. And so it's an invitation. I always tell people it's an invitation to try and be open to receive what comes through. And you can always ask, hey, and ask in a way or that you'll recognize, right? So nature is always speaking to us. Like, I'm looking out the window and I filled that bird feeder right before we came on here, and those birds bring me joy. And so if you have that affinity towards nature and God's creatures, they have a wonderful creative way to just get our attention, and you'll know because 'cause you'll feel it.
I
So
love that. And I also was thinking as you were talking that when I help spirits cross, that oftentimes when I would ask for like a being to come forward for them to help them to cross for those that are having a little bit of difficulty, I
mhm.
can't tell you how many times it is a beloved pet. It's a horse, it is a dog, is it a cat that comes forward to walk with them. And I think that there is something really special about that, and I've always heard and I believe that you can ask for certain beings or people or pets to come forward when it's our time to pass, and that they'll come forward, and it just always gave me such comfort to know that first and foremost, I know my dog is gonna be there, and I'm sure Joe's gonna be there as well, but it just gives me comfort to know that those are gonna be the first beings that I see when I cross into spirit.
Yes, and you will, and I wrote that on here, and because I think just kinda to add to that as well, that sometimes people, they just want that peace of mind that, are they happy? Are they healthy? Are they with my other pets and my other loved ones? And yes, we will be reunited with them one day. I always say it's not an if, just a when. And again, some of us have that capacity or the gift to connect, and I'm grateful that that's what I'm here to do for them. So,
Wonderful, Catherine. So I think that's the perfect time to kind of wrap up and to have you tell people any upcoming events or things that you have going on and where they can find you in your work.
awesome. So currently I'm teaching yoga in my hometown where I live. So that's more of a new offering since I just graduated. And these my yoga classes are free for veterans and military and our community, first responders, police, fire. So it's a trauma informed yoga, so those are free, and I'm doing that every Wednesday at United Senior Services in Springfield. And then I also just started offering, private yoga and chakra balancing sessions, and really anything that I'm offering right now, whether it's intuitive counseling or animal communication, all of the prices and, platforms, if you will. So whether you want to meet virtually, in person, email, that all of that information's on my website. And then I just kind of, as life happens or the seasons change, I do host community Reiki circles more often in the Salt Spa in Urbana, and sometimes have events at the Hearts and Homes Reiki in Springfield. So I'm kind of all over the place at the moment.
Perfect. And I think that this episode really went as well as I think it could. It was really what I was hoping that we would talk about with pet loss and pet communication. So thank you for sharing your insight and experience with us today.
Thank you, Gina. It's a topic near and dear to my heart, and I am very grateful that you had me on today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you everyone for listening today. I really enjoyed this episode and I hope that you found it helpful. As always, if you liked this podcast, please consider leaving us 5 stars and following. We'd be really grateful. If you'd like to find out more about Catherine's work, I will put that in the show notes. And if you'd like to learn more about my work, you can find me at thekarunalife.com, or you can always email me, Gina at thekarunalife.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks and have a great day.